Hi guys, this is Marvin from shopsadapage.com, and today we are going to do an unboxing and review of a new keyboard from Royal Kludge, the RK71. So basing from the name, it has 71 keys, it has dedicated arrow keys as well as knob cluster while still maintaining a small form factor. I'm so excited to share this review with you guys, so let's get into it. The packaging for the Royal Kludge RK71 is pretty standard for a budget mechanical keyboard. We have the Royal Kludge logo at the center, and at the back we have some information written in Chinese. If I had to guess, I feel like it is their contact information and the keyboard certifications right here. So let's see what comes in the package. Inside the box, we have the keyboard itself. There's no foam padding that we usually see, but the cardboard box itself serves as the protection for the keyboard. The keyboard itself is protected by plastic rather than the usual foam sleeve. Inside the box, you also have the user manual that looks pretty easy to understand. Inside the cardboard protection, we have a couple of items here. We have the detachable cable, which is a USB Type-C cable, and I am actually glad to see new mechanical keyboards like this to utilize the reversible Type-C cable, so that it is easy to plug it in, especially that the USB port is at the back of the keyboard. And lastly, inside the box, we also have a couple of magnetic stands right here for height adjustments. Now, let's take a look at the Royal Kludge RK71 itself. As you can see, the keyboard is very compact and slim. It is slightly longer than the 60% keyboards that I've tried before. It does have a nice weight to it of around 642 grams, and it feels really solid for a keyboard made of plastic. On the front side, we have the Royal Kludge logo right here. And flipping it on its side, we can see that the keyboard is slightly angled for a more ergonomic design with a quite interesting polygonal design here with the side glow illumination. Aside from the red color accent, I like this edgy design. The bottom housing is high profile, so the key switches are not visible as you can see here. This keyboard also used the standard OEM profile for the keycaps to help with the overall ergonomic design. At the back, we have the USB Type-C port here and a design that complements the overall edgy feel of the keyboard. At the bottom, we have 4 rubber feet right here, 2 of which you can attach the included magnetic keyboard stand for height adjustment. We have the usual technical information right here like the power rating, serial number, and certifications. Right here, we have the on and off switch for the Bluetooth connectivity. We also have a slot ready for a Bluetooth dongle in case you want to bring this keyboard along with you, which I think is a pretty nice touch. The keyboard doesn't come with a Bluetooth dongle though, so you have to purchase that separately if you haven't owned one already. The slot is actually magnetic, which is pretty cool. Going back in front, the keyboard's form factor is pretty slim and longer than usual. It uses the standard ANSI layout, so replacing the keycaps on this is going to be a piece of cake. But what's good about this is that we have dedicated arrow keys here at the lower right bottom, as well as dedicated knob cluster right here. The only issue is that we lose the menu key right here. We only have the Alt, Function, and Control. It also lacks a couple of keys from the knob cluster like the print screen and scroll lock. But at least we have the most important keys here. In terms of the functions and its legends, right here we have the key for switching between game and office mode. And then we have the usual functions keys up top that doubles as the numbers row. We also have 5 keys for Bluetooth connectivity, a couple of keys to switch between Windows and Mac, and the Windows key and Mac's command key here. The letter P doubles as the Bluetooth pairing mode key. And then we have the lighting effects keys here with the insert and home key. And lastly, we also have the usual speed and brightness adjustments using the arrow keys here. All of these functions can be toggled by pressing Fn plus the corresponding key. I've also noticed some key combinations that determine the function of the keyboard. For example, you can press Fn plus left control to swap between function keys and number keys. But you can also press Fn plus function keys to trigger them on the fly. Aside from that, you can also press Fn plus left Alt to interchange left Alt key and Windows key. And lastly, you can also press Fn plus caps lock to interchange caps lock and left control. I'm not sure where these interchangeable keys are useful for, but you have that as an option. In terms of the fonts used aside from the legends, it is actually quite clean. The fonts are at just the right size and the legends are also translucent and not painted, which matches the fonts. Now, let me turn off some lights on this room so that we can check the different lighting effects of this keyboard. The Royal Kludge RK71 has a ton of lighting modes with 18 different effects. But for this particular version that I have right here, we only have ice blue color option. Looking at the manual, I think they will also release an RGB version for this. To change lighting mode, just press Fn plus home. So as usual, let us breeze through the 18 different lighting effects here. Now to change the lighting modes on the side glow illumination, just press Fn plus insert. You can cycle through different static colors plus color cycle and color spectrum effects. Now for the RGB version of this keyboard, you can change the colors by pressing Fn plus N. You can also change the brightness by the usual Fn plus down and Fn plus up arrow keys. And of course, you can also change the animation speed by pressing Fn plus left and Fn plus right arrow keys. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the lighting effects. If you want to reset the keyboard to factory settings, just press Fn plus spacebar. When it comes to the LEDs on this keyboard, this one uses SMD LEDs, which are mounted to the board itself and not on the switches. Looking closer, we can see just that through the holes on the switches. The LEDs are bright enough and pretty substantial for typing at night or in dim environment. Now that you've seen the switches, let's talk about that. The Royal Kludge RK71 uses their own brand of switch, which is RK Blue for this particular keyboard. RK Blue requires 50 grams of actuation force, work travel distance of 2.2mm, and a total of 4.0mm travel distance. As per my close testing, the RK Blues, being a clicky and tactile switch, are very satisfying. Blue switch by popular opinion is good for typing as you will really feel every key press with its high-pitched click and tactile feedback. Now, as usual, we're going to do some switch comparisons right here. We're going to compare the RK Blue to the Gateron Blue on the Geek GK64 and Cherry MX Blue on my switch tester. Like I said earlier, the RK Blue requires 50 grams of actuation force, while the Gateron and Cherry MX Blues both requires 55 grams. But as per my close testing, the Cherry MX Blue feels the heaviest, the RK Blue sits in the middle, while the Gateron Blue feels the lightest. The difference among them is really small, and for some it might pass as almost the same. I really feel like the smoothness of the Gateron switch makes it a little bit lighter than most switches that I've tried. Speaking of smoothness, the Gateron as always is the smoothest, surprisingly followed by the RK Blues and then Cherry MX Blue. I might be wrong with this one, but that is what I've observed here. Now in terms of click sound, the Gateron Blue is the loudest, while the RK Blues and Cherry MX Blue sounds almost the same. The difference between the clicks on these switches are also not very different from each other, and all of them sounds good for me personally. I think so far this is the most difficult switch to compare because there are a lot of factors to consider, not just the actuation force but things like smoothness, tactile bump, and click. Personally, I still prefer the Gateron switch because of its smooth travel, but I was surprised by how good the RK Blues feel. The Cherry MX Blue is of course Cherry MX Blue and you can't go wrong with that. Now in terms of the stabilizers, it is not super wobbly but you'll definitely hear some rattle and high-pitched sound when being tapped. As per close inspection, it does come with factory lube on it. Overall, aside from some rattle, it is well balanced. Now before we do some typing tests, let's check out the keycaps first. The keycaps on the RK71 is made of painted ABS plastic with laser etched fonts. Unfortunately, it is not double shot so it is thin and feels a little bit cheap. Not to mention, it is also quite loose as you can see here. Since this is ABS plastic and only painted with black, the keycaps will inhibit shine over time and the legends will fade much easier compared to keycaps with double shot molding. With regards to the keycaps being loose, as per my testing for a few days, it doesn't really come off with normal typing. You will only notice that it is loose if you flick press it on its side as you can see here, or if you try to remove it manually. Alright guys, moving on, as usual, let's do some typing tests so that you can have an idea how the RK Blue sounds. And of course, I'll also include other keyboards for comparison. Now here are some size comparison for you guys. So this is the Geek GK64. By the way, watch out for my review of this because I think this is a pretty decent keyboard as well. As you can see, the Geek GK64 is much shorter because of the dedicated arrow keys and nav cluster of the RK71. We also have the Unpro 2, which is basically the same 60% form factor. And then for kicks and giggles, we have a full-size 104 keys keyboard right here. As you can see, the RK71 is pretty compact compared to a traditional keyboard size. I also double checked the size of the keycaps of the RK71, especially with the shift and space bar, and I was able to verify that it is standard. Because sometimes keyboards with dedicated arrow keys sacrifice the size of some keys to accommodate the arrow keys while maintaining a compact form factor. Next, let's discuss the Bluetooth connectivity of the Royal Kludge RK71. This keyboard can be connected up to 5 devices simultaneously and you can easily switch between them. To connect the keyboard to your device, you just have to press Fn plus P to activate Bluetooth mode. Then press Fn plus any keys from Q, W, E, R, and T, and then press Fn plus P again for 3 seconds until it blinks, indicating that the keyboard is now in pairing mode. Pair your device and you're good to go. In terms of Bluetooth performance when it comes to the latency, as per my testing, I didn't saw any significant difference between wired and wireless mode. As you can see here, they are basically the same. And I can verify that with my actual real-world testing because I didn't encounter any input lag on both typing and gaming experience. When it comes to range and signal strength, although this keyboard only uses Bluetooth 3.0, I didn't encounter any disconnections or missing keys when using this via wireless mode. I can also use this as far as I can until the text and details on my monitor are barely readable. So overall, the Bluetooth functionality on this keyboard is pretty good. Now, since this keyboard has Bluetooth functionality, it has a built-in 1000 mAh of battery. And as per specifications, charging time is around 3 hours. While charging, there is a red LED indicator on the spacebar that turns off once it is fully charged. A full charge should last up to 10 hours of continuous working time, and as usual, that would vary depending on how you use the keyboard, if with illumination or not. As per my testing, I was able to use the keyboard normally via Bluetooth with LEDs turned on for about 19.5 hours, and this is with the power saving mode engaging from time to time when I am away from the keyboard for a while, as anyone would normally use this keyboard. The power saving mode will turn off illumination after 1 minute if it is not being used and will go into standby mode after 5 minutes. This will prolong the battery life of the keyboard and should last you a day without needing to recharge. Finally, let's discuss the overall performance of this keyboard. With regards to typing experience, as one might expect with a blue switch, it is very satisfying to type with. The click is good without overly sharp high-pitched sound, and the tactile feedback is also nice and is perfectly synced with the click. I have no issues whatsoever with the RK Blue switch. I just hope that the keycaps are a little bit tighter than it is, though like I said earlier, I didn't encounter any keycap coming off unintentionally. What I like about this keyboard when it comes to the typing experience is that it has dedicated arrow keys as well as dedicated knob cluster while still maintaining a very slim and compact form factor. With this, I don't have to mess with layers and key combinations just to use these valuable keys. Now the question in my head is, why go for a 60% keyboard if you can go with a 70% one with just like a couple of columns added? Well, of course, that would depend on anyone's personal preference. The same argument can be said with a regular keyboard versus a one-handed keyboard. So let's just say every keyboard has its own purpose and a place in our heart. Now, it is worth noting that there is a little bit of transition time required when using a 71 key layout like this, because usually our muscle memory tends to go to the top right corner to hit the backspace. But since there is a couple of columns here, sometimes I hit the insert or home key instead of the backspace. But once I was able to familiarize myself with this layout, I really appreciate having these dedicated keys. Now, this keyboard, like most keyboards nowadays, has NKRO feature or N-key rollover, which allows you to press multiple keys at the same time without conflicts. In wired mode, as per testing, I can press multiple keys at the same time and they are all registering. I can easily press up to 10 keys at the same time in wired mode. But in Bluetooth mode, the maximum keys that I can press at the same time without conflicts is up to 5 keys, as you can see here. Personally, 5 keys are more than enough for normal day-to-day typing tasks as well as for gaming. Speaking of gaming, the performance of the Royal Kludge RK71 is also pretty good. In popular opinion, gamers tend to prefer linear switches without click or tactile feedback because they are always going to bottom out the keys anyway. And sometimes they don't prefer the clicking sound to get in the way with the in-game sounds. But that of course is subjective to anyone's personal preference. Some prefer clicky switches to make sure they feel every action they take in-game. For me personally, it doesn't really matter, as I am more focused in-game rather than anything else, and more often than not, I am using a pair of headphones. Performance-wise, I have no issues with the RK Blue switches. Now before we finish this review, one interesting factor that you need to consider about this keyboard is its color scheme. Like I said, this version only has ice blue illumination, and that the side accent design's color is red, so you're just limited to that. But if your setup and your other peripherals are already red and blue like what I have here, then you're good to go. And lastly, this version of the RK71 doesn't have any software. and I was able to verify that only the RGB version will have a software. Alright guys, so to conclude, the Royal Kludge RK71 is really an interesting keyboard to consider if you're looking for your first compact keyboard. If you're coming from either a full-sized keyboard or a 10 keyless one, and you're looking for a smaller keyboard while still having dedicated arrow keys and nav cluster, then this is worth checking out. Aside from its limiting color scheme and poor quality keycaps, it has a pretty decent design and overall great build quality structure-wise. It has satisfying RK Blue switches and works flawlessly in both wired and wireless mode. It also has some features that I really appreciate, like the magnetic Bluetooth dongle slot and the magnetic stand with rubber feet for height adjustment. The side illumination is also a nice touch, although I feel like it could have been better if the color is more neutral like silver or gray instead of red, so it would be easy to match it with anyone's setup. Overall, this keyboard is still pretty easy to recommend with everything taken into consideration. The price is also quite competitive at only around $50 which is right around the corner of a budget mechanical keyboard. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Make sure to check the full article link below. Thanks to Royal Kludge for sending this in. You can get this from their official AliExpress store link below. Subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Thank you, have a great day.